The Quarantine Sessions podcast with J. Cole.
Wow, cool. Yeah, amazing. There's so much like hidden history in the world. I was just watching this documentary about this guy was talking about the occult history of America and how like Madame Blavatsky had a huge influence on spirituality in America and influenced like Gandhi and there's just all these little tidbits of history that get pushed under the surface that people don't really know about that is really fascinating.
Yeah, and as you start talking to people and really dig deeper, there's so much to be discovered all the time.
Yeah, always.
Magic land everywhere,
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much, Martina, for doing this podcast with me.
Oh, yeah.
So what I'm going to do is there's so much I want to talk to you about. You've been such an inspiration for so many years for me in my artistic career and pursuits. And I'm going to read this artist statement that you have on your website to introduce you. And that'll be the kind of official start of our podcast. And then I have a bunch of so many different subjects that I want to talk to you about in relation to your art and your creative process. And
nice.
Yeah. How much time do you have?
Well, we can go for a good hour, it's fine. I mean, if it runs over time, I'm not like stressed for time. I'm good.
Okay.
And I'm going to, I think, well, how's that window? Because we have so many tourists here right now and they all drive along, like this is around the time where people start coming back from the beach and people come back from work, and sometimes in my little road down there, sometimes there's like motorcycles and I don't want the motorcycles to go through. On the other hand, I want to be able to get some fresh air. So Pascal, tu penses que tu peux m'ouvrir la fenêtre dans la chambre, comme ça je ferme ici. Je pense que c'est mieux. If not, you hear the cars. So I think it's better. This is better, no? Did you hear a little less? Or did you hear them before at all?
I don't really hear anything. So
okay.
Yeah, the sound is great. It's very clear.
Nice. Very cool.
Awesome. So you feel ready to dive in?
We can go.
Awesome. So yeah, it's an honor to be speaking with you, Martina. I've been so influenced by your work and very deeply inspired by the visionary works of art that you create. And from your website, this is your artist statement. You say, paintings may function as mirrors reflecting the individual viewer's consciousness. With deeper introspection, they may also function as portals to the more subtle and intuitive states of our existence. As artists, we bravely bare our soul to the world and create maps into our inner landscapes. My work is an attempt to portray spirit as the one universal force beyond the confines of cultural and religious differences. By embracing our oneness as a global human family, the interdependency of all life, as well as our universal interconnectedness, we have a chance to heal and transform the planet's current state of woundedness. In this pursuit, we may use art as a tool for transformation, and with it, have the opportunity to create a shared reality as beautiful, healthy, and strong as our imagination permits. Mm-hmm. So thank you, Martina. And yeah, just such a beautiful mission statement to try to use your art as a transformational agent, as a way of affecting the world and creating change. And I guess that as a good way to begin this conversation, I wanted to ask you just about your own journey of how you became an artist and how the art that you've created has played a role in your own transformation and in your own healing, and how that then can help to heal and transform the planet's state of woundedness, as you put it.
Yeah, well, I guess that, you know, this is true for most artists, and it's certainly true for me that um, I've always created from my earliest days of it, you know, my childhood. I love to draw and build and construct. I mean, I was just really into creating and making magical little things. And then uh, as I was trying to figure out what my life's path would be, I studied sculpting at the university in Frankfurt, at the Goethe University, and I embarked on this path of being a sculptor for a while, and during those years I didn't really like school that much. I didn't feel that it was anything that I was hoping for, because I found it to be too academic, and I really wanted to live this sort of bohemian life and, you know, immerse myself in a whole different way. Frankfurt University is kind of a rough path, because at the time it was already 40 or 50,000 students and skyscrapers, and you would go from one building to another and have like classes on the 15th floor. And I mean, just big, beautiful city, but also a big, dirty city. And I didn't really enjoy that so much. So I took a sabbatical, and during that sabbatical, I went to Paris, and I've told that story many times. But I'm happy to always tell it again, because it was a really magical time in my life. And I moved to Paris for a while, got myself a job, and it was really interesting how everything was just completely guided. One day when I decided to do this, I basically I always remember it was New Year's Eve, and I went to this big party in some communal place with lots of friends who played music. And at 12 o'clock at midnight, I stood in front of a girl, and we had this glass of champagne, and we said, Happy New Year. And she said, so what are you wishing for? And I said, well, I want to move to Paris, and I want to kind of live there for a while, but I don't know how to do this, because I don't have money. I'm a student. I don't have a place to stay. I don't have a job. And she says, oh, that's perfect, because I just came back from Paris. I'm just here for a few days, and I can hook you up. And she hooked me up with this great agency. And within a week, I filled out some papers, and about 10 days later, I had everything I asked for. A beautiful apartment in the heart of Sacré, you know, by Sacré-Cœur, and then I, you know, had a job that was, you know, noon to afternoon, and my weekends off, and I was paid, and it was just like perfect, you know. And the people I was working for took me to this fabulous little village in Spain, Cadaqués. And while I knew that Dali was living in Portligat, I had no idea that Cadaqués was part of it, or Portligat a part of Cadaqués. So then the rest was just an amazing chain of synchronicity. And that's how I met Robert, because Robert had been living in Cadaqués for 17 years, or at that point for 10 years. And we ended up living there for 8 years together. So we connected. Was a real meeting of kindred spirits, soulmates, and, you know, we just, I guess, needed to be together. It was really difficult because he was married, he had kids, and it was a really difficult time, difficult for all of us. But there was nothing that we could do about it, and we just followed our hearts, and I hope it turned out good for everybody. It turned out good for us, and we certainly
It sure did.
Yeah, and so we just connected, and we had so much to share. I mean, we shared our spiritual path and our interest in in energy, and we connected on an artistic level. We had a lot of co-inspiration, and that's how I became a painter. So leading up to all of, yes, and Robert was certainly, you know, embodying such an amazing artistic path, and he was already quite known at that time, and so I had my wish. I moved into the studio of a living master, and I kind of watched what he was doing, and that's how I became a painter. He wasn't really teaching me in that sense. He was really, you know, very stern and teaching me a few things in the beginning, and but he kind of let me do my thing, and I grabbed, and, you know, as you know, when you watch artists you love work in their studios, that's when you learn the most and the quickest, and you just by osmosis, and you just see what they're doing, and you go, wow, that's pretty interesting, and then you develop your own style, and that's it in a nutshell. So that's the first part of the question, I guess.
Yeah, well, it sounds like just a lot of magic involved, a lot of synchronicity, and yeah, I've heard this definition of magic, that magic is your natural ability to attract things without asking for them, like just this state of hyper attraction towards your destiny or your soul's calling. Do you ever feel like this is like your, I don't know, the aspect of destiny as it relates to your path and to the artist's path? Because it seems to me that your journey has been filled with these legends like Robert Venosa, like Dali, like H.R. Giger, like Albert Hoffman, all these amazing people that you have had that whose path has coincided with yours. Mm-hmm. And I just, it's so remarkable. Like, that's such a remarkable thing that your life has been filled with these legendary people. And I wonder how much of that you believe is, destiny or something like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I can't help but think that all these things were kind of, you know, planned for me. Or maybe I had, you know, developed this really cool contract and co-signed it with all these amazing beings before I came here this time. Because I think that that's how it kind of works. You know, we kind of line it up, and then we come here, and it's basically what we have planned for ourselves. And but, you know, it sounds maybe a little presumptuous, but I think destiny, I mean, yeah, I can go for that word. You know, I think it felt really destined. And yeah, and when things are aligned and you make that perfect turn, or at least the turn that calls out to your heart, then everything else follows. I think when we really follow our intuition at all times and our calling, then things just flow for us. And I think you're right too when you say that. Well, I like this quote from the runestones where it says, I forget which runestone it is, but there's this part that says, we are more deciders than we are doers, because once we've decided, everything else falls into place automatically.
Mm-hmm.
It's more like setting the energy, right? And you have this vision, and it's kind of like doing a rain dance, you know, when you imagine, or when you start feeling the rain touching your skin, and you feel the earth getting wet, and then you have the mud between your toes. It's kind of like that. You have to really feel it. It's not so much like making a plan or writing out a thing on paper. It's more like a deeply intuitive and felt experience where you project this desire. It's a desire. It has there's a lot of emotion involved, I think, when we create our visions, and passion, you know. Mm-hmm. You have to feel passionate about what we do in life. It's what makes us alive, that makes us thrive and propels us forward, I think.
I think there's a lot of similarities in that to the creative process when it comes to making paintings also. Yeah. Because you have to be able to listen to that inner guidance while you're creating a painting, and also to commit to a vision without necessarily knowing all the details of how it's going to be realized. You know, so when you're really diving into the unknown, as you are with your work and creating works of art that have never been seen before, you're diving into that process of really needing a lot of trust and a lot of faith in it, that you're going to be guided in the realization of that particular image. And I think that when you live your life like that, really remarkable things happen.
Yeah, sure.
Magical things happen.
Yeah, yeah. And I mean, life is also a creation, you know, we are artists in life. And that's how I wish that everybody could live their lives as artists, so they can really be fully immersed in their experience and own what they do and enjoy it most of all. You know, I think that's the hardest part for most of us, because we get so wrapped up in daily, everyday stuff that keeps us away from really enjoying the moment. Because everything is a, you know, if things go well, then everything is a blessing, you know, as every experience
Absolutely.
enriches us. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's something beautiful about the psychedelic experience, is that it can open your eyes to seeing the miraculous even in the most commonplace things. And I think it is part of the role of the artist to be able to see the common aspects of life, but to see them with fresh eyes, to be able to really behold the mystery and the magic that's inherent, and something that most people would just barely glance over.
Right. Yeah, yeah, it's true. It's true. And yeah, I totally agree. And it's almost like you know, children do that. They don't miss a beat. For them, everything is new and everything is exciting, and they always have questions. I've noticed that in some people, that the finest minds always have a lot of questions. You know, if you think about Terrence, you know, Terrence McKenna, he always had questions. I mean, he's always going like, well, what if, you know, and what about this? And so, I mean, this should never end. Our being should always be wanting to know more and experience more. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think Leonardo da Vinci is a great example of that as well. Somebody that was constantly asking questions, and some of those questions were rather strange, but just the endless curiosity into discovering what this life has to behold and the secrets that lie beneath the surface.
Yep, truly, truly.
So something I'm really curious about in your work is that you often portray these paintings of spirits or these kinds of non-corporeal entities. And I'm really curious why you choose to portray those as a subject, and what your experiences with these kinds of entities, what Terrence may have called machine elves, but you know, other people call angels or spirits. But I find these presences to be very interesting, and I love the way that you portray them.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, I call them some are sort of aliens, and I'm always curious as to what they might look like. And it's not, I mean, I've seen a ton of these entities with psychedelic journeys or shamanic journeys, but I don't know. I don't like to place a label on them, but yeah, I could, you know, I like the term angels, and I don't mean in the Christian biblical sense. And why not? I mean, you know, archangels to me are very real. I call on them, and I love to work with them. They have beautiful energy, and we all have protector spirits that guide us, and so. And the aliens that I paint, quote unquote, you know, I want to see, I mean, it's probably their way of showing me what they look like, because I don't create them, they create themselves. You know, I don't sit down and sketch out a form and say, well, this is what I want to do. And I don't really use the mental process too much in my artwork. I really let a painting develop by itself. And so they, yeah, they just show up for me. And then my great interest has always been with energy. So I've always loved to feel energy, this energy that surrounds us at all times, that makes us alive, that animates the whole universe. And that is my life's desire, to show that energy. It's really something, it can't be really shown, but I'm trying to find these I'm trying to translate it, you know, I'm trying to create these forms and these flows that approximate those experiences of feeling energy. So yeah, they're ethereal and astral, and yeah, I mean, someday we'll know, we'll have better words for them, but at this point, I'm just trying to bring them through with my limited capabilities. I have a little one here that I'm working on. See, like this one, it's on paper. Can you see it?
Oh, wow. Yeah, it's gorgeous.
That's like, I call it metamorphosis. It's something I drew during the lockdown. So there's a little insectoid that is dematerializing and rematerializing, and then some entity that supports that process.
And what medium do you use to create this?
This is on paper, and I'm using crayons.
Oh, wow, cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's Grand Dash crayons, and so, you know, it's still in process, but in progress. And yeah, I'm just, yeah.
So most of your creative process is entirely intuitive,
Yeah.
right? But do you have ever a particular intention for something that you're trying to bring through? Or is it like every time you sit down, you go into a kind of trance and it's completely open to whatever wants to come through?
For the most part, that's the case. But obviously, if I do a portrait, sometimes I do choose to use an actual person in my paintings. And in that case, I do consider how I place them. So there's more of a mental, well, in that case, I do think about it. Do I, you know, is it going to be a central figure? Is it going to be off to the right, to the left? How do I balance it out? But that's the only thing I do. And after that, I just basically block in big blocks of color, and everything else develops from there. On occasions, I have lots of dreams. I do a lot of beautiful lucid dreaming. And there's one painting that wants to come through. It's been wanting to manifest for a few months now. And when I first saw it in the hypnagogic state, I wasn't quite, I don't always understand why these things show themselves to me, but I always trust that they appear to me for a specific reason. You know, they show themselves because they're important and they want to be seen. They come here to guide us, just like guardian spirits do. And so it's going to be called The Birth of Hope. And now I understand why I have to paint this painting. And during this time, people are really in need of good support. And because we're all, you know, most people are really confused, me included. I mean, what do you do with all this information that they're feeding us? You know, on one hand, you read the statistics and they're saying that the statistics are very small compared to the flu of infections worldwide. On the other hand, you have the new statistics that say that there's a second round arriving. We're having more cases coming back, even here in Brittany. But then they're also doing more testing right now. So in the midst of the first round of COVID, there were no tests available. So of course, if you're doing testing, all of a sudden there's going to be more cases. And then you have the epidemiologists, and they and some of them, some of the finest ones, say that this thing is already running its course. You know, they say that after 1 year or year and a half, a virus is being absorbed into the ecosystem, you know, and then it no longer affects us, and it mutates, and then we adjust to it. And so what to do with all of this? And it's a very confusing time for most of us. And so it takes a lot of strength for us to stay positive and to know that we'll be okay overall. And it's important to remember during this time that our thoughts do count. You know, what we think our reality is going to be like is really going to make our reality. And if we buy into the fear, we'll create a fearful place, and it might just be harder for us to pull through it. But if we also stay positive without sticking our heads into the sand, because this is a serious situation. And I know a lot of people who've had the virus, and who still have really nasty after effects. And they're all ages. Some are really young, and they're struggling, you know. So this is a time for me. It's the big reset button. This is like it feels to me like the lockdown felt to me like a vision quest, where we all collectively went into this hibernation, and where we had to face whatever was there for us. And some of us, and many of us, had to face a lot of stuff. You know, we have a lot of stuff that we carry, and it was a serious vision quest. And it took us. This was not just 3 or 4 or 5 weeks with medicine or without, you know, food and water. This was weeks and weeks and weeks, and we're still carrying remnants of that. I mean, we're still living remnants of that vision quest. But it's also such an opportunity to face ourselves, and to be truthful, and look at the shadows that we still have, and move through them, you know, acknowledge them, and see what we can do about shifting them, shifting paradigms, you know. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a collective initiation. I think during initiation experiences, there's always the shaman that helps to carry the tribe through. And I think that it's part of the role of the artist to help define a new narrative as the old narrative and the old worldview begins to crumble. And I know that visionary art hasn't really been very widely accepted in the mainstream, but I wonder if, as people go through these deep initiations, and if people will be able to resonate more deeply with the kinds of themes that are presented in visionary art, and if visionary art may, as a result, be recognized in this time as providing greater value to the world, mm-hmm. and not just to a small group of people, but to the collective.
Yeah, I think this is definitely happening. Some people, I think there's more and more people who are interested in visionary art, and but it's also a time where people have more space to stop and to discover, because let's face it, you're right, visionary art hasn't had the right exposure. It's not for lack of beauty or impact that visionary art, or the term of visionary art, is kind of still an unknown entity to a lot of people. It's more because it hasn't been visible, it hasn't been seen. So that's why these spaces like the Naya Museum here in France it's a beautiful space, and I like to really talk about it because it's very close to where we live, to our studios, and we've been part of this incredible initiative that started in 2015. It's the 6th season now, And this collection holds the artwork of over 80 artists from around the world. And it's all thanks to Patrice Petubert and Manu van H. And their dedication that this place has been growing, and we've all been working to create more interest, and people come from all over the place, and it's a fabulous setting. It's in an old castle in a small village that was elected the most beautiful village in France. They do that every year. So it's a great, fabulous, I mean, you come in and it's very regal. You come through these big gates and you come into the castle park with these huge old trees and these big meadows. And then you have these beautiful old buildings, and you come inside into the museum, and it's like a magical curiosity cabinet. You know, it's like, some aspects are very whimsical and others are very, you know, very, very dark. And, you know, it's like, there's even like a catacomb where you go deep into the ground, and they've managed to assemble a gorgeous collection of different types of art. I mean, there's anything from classical painting to sculpting to digital art to animations to you name it, puppets and objects and magical objects and ritual objects. So it's really fantastic. So these, having spaces like that is really important right now to and people love to visit, and we get nothing but great comments. You know, people are excited about this. And we're also creating a little festival that is held annually. We had the first festival last fall, and we were going to do a big number this September. But now with the COVID, we're not so sure. So it's going to be a modest size festival because we'll have to observe social distancing. But it's going to be music and presentations and live painting and you know, communicating with the visitors, and just beautiful dances, and you know, the whole interactive scene, like a tiny medieval Burning Man.
Cool. Yeah, I would love to go to the Nye Museum someday. I've seen photos of it and it looks amazing.
Yeah.
It's cool too. I mean, this situation, the lockdown has definitely put a greater emphasis on what you can do with the internet. And like, there's a Spirit Fest thing that's coming up that Liba's organizing. And I thought the idea of, and I'm a part of that, and I'm excited about it.
I think
there's just something.
I think we'll be on.
I think we're
together. Yeah.
Cool. We're going to be doing a panel. It's so cool just to have people from all over the world, and the idea of having digital studio visits. That's a really cool thing. That
is very
would never happen if this lockdown circumstance wasn't the case.
Yeah.
And so I think that all this stuff that's going on online, it might bring a greater awareness for visionary art also. And I do think that part of it is that it hasn't really been, in mainstream culture, it hasn't been seen as cool to consider the existence of angels, or, you know, these kinds of spiritual ideas are really frowned upon, and there's a lot of shame around it in the kind of I guess postmodern worldview. It's really, you know, reductionistic and really materialistic. And so if you're saying like, oh, I had this experience of contacting this divine intelligence and I made this painting inspired by that, a lot of people kind of judge that, or they don't let themselves entertain those ideas. So I think that there is a trend towards more spirituality. I believe that. And I think that as people open up more to these kinds of ideas, which are kind of contrary to popular belief systems right now, that when those ideas become more acceptable, then visionary art will have its time to shine, because it doesn't create so much dissonance within the worldview of of the mainstream belief system.
Yeah, yeah. But yeah, this is definitely true, and you know, keeping these events alive and going certainly helps. But there's also an array of really fantastic scientists like Nassim Hamadin and Stanislav Grof. I mean, people who are incredible pioneers. If I think about Stan, who's in his late 80s now, who's just going to publish his 2-volume book about his life's work. And without people like Stan, we would not understand the psyche properly. And he's actually, I love people like him because, and Nassim, because they're bridge workers. I'm a bridge worker, you know, we're working between the worlds, and we're aligning people, we're connecting people. Stan is with his idea of the psyche and his efforts to bring awareness to the fact that we are spiritual beings, and that the psyche is such an incredible entity that is so instrumental in healing, and how what has been labeled mental illness for as long as we can think on nothing but, in most cases, manifestations of the psyche and its need to process unresolved events, and then to actually the body and the psyche will heal the body eventually, and they're not considered spiritual. They're considered spiritual emergencies instead of pathological events. And I mean, this is so incredible. And he has done so much in changing these paradigms. And this will also help with, and has helped change our ideas about what it means to be alive in a body that is truly, at the end of the day, inhabited and made alive by a spirit, by energy.
Absolutely. Yeah. Stengroff's work is amazing, and it's ahead of his time. And there's kind of, you know, there's a blessing and a curse to being ahead of your time. It's a great thing to be ahead of your time, but that also means you're not going to really be fully understood by most people.
Yes.
But, and you know, my father's a psychologist. So from what I've heard about psychology is that it takes a long time for things to change in the academic psychology world. So if you have new ideas, as Stan Grof does, it can take a long time before those new ideas become properly integrated into people's mental frameworks. But I think that Stan Grof's work really relates to the kind of artistic impulse that exists within people in general. And the idea that these pathologies present themselves because people don't have a way to properly express themselves. And in the past, in shamanic cultures, there would be these kind of mythological rites that people would participate in that would be really dramatic and creative and artistic and speak to the mythological within ourselves. And that would give people a way to express these aspects of themselves that in our very narrow reality in Western culture is repressed. And so when that impulse is repressed and it gets pushed under the surface, it then bubbles up and it creates pathology. It creates a lot of pain for people. And that's why, you know, I like to encourage people just to make art, even if they're not ever going to become a master painter like yourself, but just to express themselves and to speak to that impulse that I think exists in every person.
Sure. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, I've taught so many workshops throughout the years, and I feel that everybody is creative, and in a way, we are artists, and it's like anything else in life. If we allow ourselves to be an artist, then we can be. But You know, but everybody has a creative impulse, and it's very, like you said, it's a very beautiful tool to free ourselves and to express and to exteriorize what might ail us or what might fill us with joy. But mostly, you know, most people who begin creating first, especially when they're younger, there's a certain angst that is expressed. So all the stuff, the garbage comes out, and which is great, you know, it's important. It's great to, I mean, you know, who hasn't done a lot of skulls and bones when they were like 14 or 15, you know, or younger.
Totally. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it's a form of energy purification, because if you believe that an artist is a channel for energy, which I totally believe in, and I definitely see that in your work as well. It's like you need to be channel through enough energy until that energy becomes purified.
Yeah.
And so your work is going to reflect that. At first it might be dark and reflect a lot of your neurosis and a lot of your trauma and whatever, but if you use the art as a vehicle to cleanse yourself of that stuff, and you leave it on the canvas instead of keeping it buried within your mind and psychology, then at a certain point you're going to cleanse through all the kind of the darkness and get to a point where light begins to emerge.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. And it's you know, and I mean, I've always enjoyed portraying the light, because everybody has their stuff, but I've always felt that I didn't want to necessarily impose my dark stuff onto the collective, because let's face it, the moment you look at something, you get imprinted. And if we look at a lot of dark art or dark expressions or dark movies, we're going to be imprinted. And once again, we're going to go into that vein, and then we might just attract that more in our lives too. So I felt that since we already have so much darkness on the planet, that it's a beautiful thing to show at least some hope, at least a way out, at least a way of light.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well,
yeah.
Your work is very light and beautiful, but it also carries a certain intensity.
Oh yeah,
with it as well.
Yeah, it does. It definitely has it still carries a little bit of a punch.
Definitely.
It's just like a good spiritual experience, you know. Usually we have to go through a little bit of an uncomfortable birthing process, and once we're in the birth canal, then we can just, you know, once we pull through it, then the light can happen. But it's all good. So it's both, you know. That's what we live at all times, I guess, keeping the balance between the
absolutely. Yeah, I had a chance to visit the H.R. Giger Museum a few years ago, which was amazing. His paintings are incredible in person, like more beautiful in person than in photographs. But the friend that I went with didn't want to go into the museum. He was terrified of his art. And it's the only place that I've ever been where I've seen people like legitimately afraid of a painting.
Yes.
Like people so creeped out by his art. But he thought that it was like he opened a portal to a dimension that never should have been opened. You know, like he opened Pandora's box to some kind of dark dimension that didn't need to be realized in our consciousness. And I don't know how I feel about that. I guess that's possible, but I also feel like Giger's work, and Stan Groff wrote about his work extensively as well, was a way of actually reconciling the trauma of the 20th century, and that his work was pretty realistic in reflecting a lot of the trauma and the horrors that people endured in the 20th century. So it was kind of like a collective exorcism that he was performing in a way. You know, I see it more as that than he wasn't importing horrors from another place, but rather just kind of realizing what was already existing in the collective psyche,
Yeah.
you know, and sort of transforming it through
Yeah.
making beautiful works of art out of it.
But it's interesting, you know, when I had that show at the Giga Museum in 2018 for 6 months. So I spent quite a bit of time and watched people go through the museum, and it was interesting to see that there is a definite sort of type of person that likes to go there. I mean, people kind of bathe in this darkness, and they like they do enjoy the look and the black clothes and the, you know, I mean, they kind of look like little devils, some of them, you know, and it's interesting. And some,
Yeah.
but I also had the chance to talk to quite a few visitors, and some of them remarked how incredible that was to move to the whole museum, to all the different levels, and then to come to the top floor and to be exposed to this exhibition that showed Robert's and my work, and to come into this burst of light, and what a relief that was. After an hour and a half of looking at this collective angst and this incest and this machine sex and this disconnection from nature and the death cult, you know, all of that, to come into that. And so, so I guess that I love Giger's work. I mean, well, love is not the right term. I just completely honor and respect him with what he's created, and he was such an incredible master. And the tricky part is that he portrayed the darkness with such beauty. It's so enticing, you know, it's so attractive. So it really, you know, I think some people definitely fall in love with that energy, and that's not for me, but I respect him tremendously. And I know, in talking to Hans Rudi before he left, he actually, I was there at a seminar with Stanislav Graf in 2012, yes. And so during one of the evenings, Hans Rudi Giger came and spoke about how he was really worried that someday when he would leave this planet, that he would end up in his reality.
Oh man.
For eternity, that he would go there and that would be his space. So it was very interesting to have him say that. It wasn't he passed away just a few years later. So that fear was real, that he had created this Pandora's box, and what to say about that.
Well, there is something about artists' lives reflecting the work that they create, and it being almost like a hyper sigil is a term that I've heard used to describe it, that you're creating a magical attractor because you're pouring so much psychic energy into an object, you know. And it's like how, like, I'm a huge fan of Beksinski's work, and he was somebody that also lived a very tragic existence, and his work is so tragic, and it's like, which created which, you know? Was he manifesting the tragedy in his life because that's what he was so focused on, you know? And other people that create really transcendent, beautiful, exalted works of art seem to attract those types of circumstances into their life, where they just have so much luck and abundance that surrounds them. So it is something fascinating, and I do think you need to use some discernment when it comes to what you're going to be focusing all of this psychic energy into and creating because I do think it has a certain level of manifestation power behind it.
I think so, and you know, it's. I mean, creating an image is a powerful act, and it reflects. Yeah, I totally agree. It does reflect. It goes both ways. You know, as we create these images, they also work in our support, and they emphasize our reality. I mean, or where we're going with it. And you know, Robert was a good example. He was a very luminous person. You know, he was a very calm and generous man, deeply spiritual, and that's where he lived. And he was not, that was his reality. And if you think about Matti Klauwein with his very witty and comments on reality, he actually said that he would love, I think it's in Milk and Honey, where he wishes that one day when he gets ready, he just wants to bow to the world and back up into one of his paintings. But he said it with joy, and it created such amazing masterpieces. I saw the whole collection, or one of the greatest collection of Matti Klauwein work in Barcelona. There's a collector, Senor Sanahuja. He's a very rich property owner, and he has about 30 of his works, including the Abraxas,
Wow.
the Iniciación,
Oh, wow.
Black Magic Woman, yeah. So that was, yeah, Matti was an incredible guy. I always love, I mean, he's one of my heroes. He was one of the people who really got me going besides Robert. Like I was really inspired by his work. He inspired me for his portraiture quite a bit, because I was really fascinated by the way he would create portraits that told stories. You know, just like, yeah, instead of just doing a depiction of a person, he would create a whole world around them. So I love that. Yeah.
Did you know Matti
I
personally?
knew him well, yeah. I knew him. I knew Matti, and we spent time with him, and Robert knew him better because he was his maestro. He was his first painting teacher in New York in the 60s, and Matti taught him his first steps in oil painting, and they also shared a home in Santa Fe later, together with when Robert was with his wife Jutta at the time, and Matti with his wife Catherine Millinaire, and they all lived together in Santa Fe. And
wow.
So, yeah, and that's when Matti was traveling throughout the United States. He brought the whole chapel over. You know, he brought it, and Robert helped him. Actually, it's a cool story because they had to pack this incredible masterpiece onto a truck, and so since the drive from New York to Colorado, I think the first stop was Boulder, Colorado, where they showed it at the university. And Matti didn't know how to drive, so Robert showed him, and Matti drove without a driver's license. I guess it was possible in the 60s, and Robert drove behind him. So they kind of took turns driving the truck all the way out to Colorado. It was the wild
wow.
day.
And that was Matti's kind of cube that you would go into, and it would be surrounded on all sides with art, right?
Yeah, the Aleph Sanctuary.
So where is the Aleph Sanctuary now?
That's a good question. If I
Do you know?
I saw pieces of it in New York, and I wonder if a part of it is in Mallorca, because Matti spent a good portion of his life, and certainly the end of his life, mostly in Mallorca, where he also lived with his last wife and mother of his last two children. And yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the collection is maybe there, or I'm not really sure. I mean, such a pity. I wish I mean, I'm holding that space to be able to open a museum collection someday where I can just really invite all these masters to show as well. And I'm really happy that Alex and Allison are so close to to their Entheon coming, coming out into the world. And
Yeah.
I mean, we need these incredible spaces all around the planet. We need these sanctuaries where people can come and get filled with the energy and feel safe and feel supported, and where they can communicate with spirit art. And so
Well,
I'm working on it. I feel it's getting closer. It's a big thing to put together, and it takes a lot of money. But I'm not giving up on the idea, because I want Robert's work to be seen and be available to a larger crowd. And when I'm home in Colorado, then a lot of people come to the house and to the studio, and it's my joy to keep the art together. It's like I have no interest in really selling it. I might sell, one piece to make the museum happen, but I really want to keep the art together, and I hope that it will. I hate to see it. I would hate to see it completely dispersed and sold off into the four winds. It's really important, to see the bulk of the work and to feel the impact of an artist's life creation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a shame that something as amazing as that Aleph Sanctuary is not available for public display. I've only seen photos of it, but it's like such an astonishing masterpiece.
It's incredible. It's incredible. Yeah. So
yeah,
and I hope the family can work it and create a public space for it at some point.
I think that there's going to be the time. I think that there's always been underground art movements that haven't quite been recognized in their time. Even postmodernism, it was against the establishment of art in the time, and now postmodernism is the biggest thing.
Yeah.
But at the time, it was the artists lived meager existences, and it wasn't recognized by the art establishments or critics of their time. And I think that visionary art, which these artists such as Maddie Clarwine, and I would include H.R. Giger in that, and obviously your work and Robert Venosa's work as well, as being part of that. I think that there may be a time in the future where it's discovered. And it'll take just one person, really, just the right art curator who happens to be connected to the right art establishment, to say, wow, like, this is amazing. Where has this been? This is an incredible art movement with incredible artists.
Yeah. Well, I think, the thing is this, the problem is that the museum collections, they're always fueled by donations. So there might be one collector who has the taste and the money to accumulate an incredible body of work from different artists or one particular artist, but then it usually takes, for him to leave the planet and the family not enjoying the collection anymore, and that's when the work is donated. And this always means that art is being donated 50 to 60 or 70 years later. And and I mean, I see some definite changes with the Guggenheim Museum had the Surrealism show about 15 years ago, and that show went from London to Düsseldorf to the Guggenheim Museum, and at the same time, even the Metropolitan Museum had an incredible Surrealism show. So, taking into account the delay, everything, the art does eventually, if it's good, I feel it does eventually come to the surface and is being visible. But hey, this is what we do, we create and might not reap the immediate recognition in our lifetime, at least not on a huge scale, always in our community. But I don't know if that has to be like this. I feel like right now there's so much shifting going on in how we see and perceive reality, and paradigms are changing so quickly that all of these concepts, I think they might be able to be tossed out the window pretty soon as well. I just envision
Definitely.
something else, where I see myself, and maybe someday somebody's going to laugh at this long after I'm gone, but I see myself being able to walk into that space and say, wow, look at these paintings. This is the collection that I chaperoned during my lifetime. This is Robert's work, and these are the artists I collected, because I love to collect my artist friends and colleagues' work. I mean, I don't have huge budgets, but I love to. I've got a beautiful collection. So does Pascal. We have beautiful little priceless pieces, and someday I see myself putting all of those on walls and expose them to a public, kind of like another well, it would be the Viva Museum. That was Robert's title for his museum. That was the term he enjoyed at the time. So,
well, I definitely believe it'll happen. I'm excited to see it.
Yeah, and to have everybody come out. I mean, I want to be able to curate like the best of psychedelic art, everybody's work, and there's so many incredible digital artists, and the super psychedelic ones like Luke and Android and Amanda, and we're all doing the work. We're holding space.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a collective vision that I think every artist wants to see realized. So I think that it's only a matter of time. And I think Entheon's going to be amazing. I can't wait to go see it when it's finished. Yes. And that's going to be a legitimate visionary art museum, and hopefully will be a permanent established exhibition space. Yeah. And for sure is going to get a lot of attention in the eyes of popular culture. Yeah. So that should also open the doors for a lot of people who deserve greater exposure for their work to be seen.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And I know that they have a very similar vision of where they're going to show visionary art throughout the ages and throughout different generations of visionary artists. Yeah, I'm super excited for it too. I'm very happy it's coming together.
Yeah. I wanted to ask you about something that you just said. You were talking about not selling your originals because of the strength of keeping the work together and to maintain the body of work. And I think that there's truth in that. I remember talking to Amanda some years ago, and she said that Ernst Fuchs had the same advice to her, that he regretted selling some of his early works or something like that. I've heard about Alex Gray buying back his work that he had sold. But how would you suggest maintaining the balance of needing to support yourself as an artist and relying on the sale of original work, and then also wanting to maintain that collection of the work?
Yeah, well, the way I work it is that certain pieces, they're just not for sale, while others, in time, they become ripe in my eyes. So I can let them go. See, like they're all our creations, they're like our children. So how can we ever sell them? So, and I have to live with them for a while, because every piece is a very personal experience, especially since I'm dealing, some of them deal with spiritual openings and particular shamanic journeys. And so I do need to have them around me for a while. And the possibility exists, however, we have people all around us. I have Pascal here who's dealing, I don't know if you heard him moving about, and I hear,
Hi, Pascal.
Is that was that a bird or something like that? Something was knocking.
Gecko.
Oh, a gecko. Oh, that was
Gecko.
loud. Wow. So I do commission pieces. I do commission art. And when I have a commission, then I feel that I am creating a piece for somebody else. And it's just as intuitive. And I just put as much energy and effort into it, but it's never mine. It's almost like being a surrogate mom or carrying life for another person. You know, you become, you create something for somebody else. And those are the pieces that I do sell. I love to work on that basis with people. And then there's and I do limited editions. So creating really high quality, very limited prints on canvas or paper is a very nice way to offer beautiful art that is affordable for people, because not everybody can afford paintings that are in the thousands, and they might, yeah. So there's that option for the younger artists. But I really feel that if we do prints, then they should be of the finest quality, that they should be properly scanned, and that they have to be really beautifully digitized and finely aligned, so the colors are just true and perfect and you know, as ecological as possible. And that's what I do. I have, you know, good ecological varnish that I apply myself, several layers, and it's a varnish I apply by hand, so there's even like a little bit of a texture on the print, so it doesn't look like a prefab piece.
Yeah, I like when artists put a bit of a personal touch into their prints.
Yeah.
Like including some small drawing on the back of it or something like that. That makes it a unique artifact.
Or a little special glaze that you can, you know, you can rework it a little bit and do like a special edition, or like one piece that is different from all the others. That's always an option. It's a very nice way of, a good way to go.
So I wanted to ask you, because a lot of, I get in touch with a lot of artists that are sort of just starting out. A lot of people write to me through Instagram and stuff like that. It seems like people have a lot of difficulty in empowering their own creativity and finding their own voice and finding the right technique to express themselves. I'm just kind of curious what you would say to somebody who's just starting out on their path of becoming an artist, and what words of advice you would have to them.
Well, I think first of all, it's really a wonderful thing to find a teacher that speaks to you, somebody you can have a special rapport with, and whose art you really find inspiring, and then to go ahead and learn good technique. I mean, I love to sketch. I don't do it enough, but I love it. I don't pre-sketch my work, so I'm not the person who will do a sketch or multiple sketches like many artists do, because I go straight into my canvas. So I don't have a ton of drawings, but whenever I draw, like this piece here, you know, just I have little sketchbooks and I sketch in those. And it's just such a great way to affirm your line, to become more confident, to train your eye, do a quick sketch of anything, and yeah, be passionate about that. And that's a great way to go. And so you know, pay attention to how the old masters painted. I mean, there's such an incredible wealth of mind-blowing art, especially when you go into the academic, you know, poo-pooed circles of art. That, I mean, so much incredible art hangs here in France. If you go to the Musée d'Orsay, the Orientalists, I mean, these people, they were incredible masters. I mean, the light that they could paint, and the Caspar David Friedrichs, and you know, the German old school of German Romanticism and British Romanticism. I mean, it's just so incredible what these artists were able to do. I mean, that's almost a lost art. I mean, there's not too many people who paint like that anymore, who can. So just to really rediscover these skills is, I think, really important. And what you do with it is entirely up to you. But once you have your tools, your tool set in place, after that you can do whatever you want, and you can, you know, go crazy and go wild and visionary and alien, and it's just
Yeah.
but really having a dedicated a really dedicated time, a dedicated space. That's a very important one. That's, I've always told my students to, no matter how small their space is, they should set up a little thing in the corner. If it's just a tiny little desk or like a little easel that never moves, because if you have to set up your space every time you want to be creative, it's very disruptive. So,
Oh, I agree.
right?
I mean, for me, I won't. It's like sometimes the barrier to just starting to paint, if you
Oh,
don't
yeah.
already have it set up, is like, I just won't. But if it's already set up, you just find yourself painting. You don't
Yeah.
even realize
Yeah.
you're doing it.
Yeah, it's like my space here. I live in a very small place right now, and it's kind of like an artist's loft, but a small artist's loft. And our living room is our studio. And when I wake up and I walk into my living room or into my kitchen, I'm already in my studio, and I get totally inspired. I mean, I want to get to work right away. So that's really important, to have your space set up, and then to keep a very good rhythm, and to stay dedicated to your work schedule. You know, it's like staying with the piece, and making sure that you get, I mean, I try to get as many hours a day as I can, and trying to work with diligence, you know, because let's face it, you know, Robert used to say a masterpiece was never created by a lazy artist. And it's true, you know, I mean, a beautiful masterpiece always takes weeks or months. I work for months on some of my pieces, and it's finished when it's finished. I never give myself a deadline, and I know when it's finished. That's always the question. Well, when do you know when it's finished? Well, when it's finished, it's kind of like what Michelangelo said, you know, when is it ready, Michelangelo? Well, when it's finished. So that, and you have that sense, it's like a gut feeling when you look at your painting and you know that, wow, now I can sign it. I might still have to do some glazes, but it might still take a few days, but it's there. This is my painting. It's there. It's almost fully born and ready. So, and yeah, a lot of dedication, a lot of work, many hours, and just yeah.
And
And
yeah, it takes a real balance, I think, between learning proper technique and also allowing room for experimentation and play, because I've studied a bit in art academies that are classical art academies that are very strict and traditional,
yeah,
and I've met a lot of artists in those places that are amazing artists on a technical level,
yeah,
but find it very challenging to create anything that is self-expressive,
yeah,
you know, or to deviate. They have a lot of difficulty in deviating from
yeah,
what is sort of the traditional way of doing things. And I
yeah.
think that if you're going to become a visionary, quote unquote, if you're going to discover something new and create something that's never been made before, you need to be really open to play and experimentation, and to go where somebody's never gone before, where there, you know, to dwell in places where there isn't a clear answer.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, good art is all about authenticity. I mean, you can sense it when an artist has this world, you know, you're looking at it and it just takes your breath away, because it's so in your face and it's so strong. The message is so powerful. Like it or don't like it. I mean, you know, some art I can say, well, you know, it's not my cup of tea, or I don't like the content, I don't like the subject matter, but I can see that artist has this authentic vision, And that's where it's at, you know. It's like, I think a good artist, well, a good artist needs to have an authentic language, a visual language, and an authentic message and expression. Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you think that that visual language, because some artists have a work that is so distinct that you could, you know, see it's their work from a mile away because their visual language is so clearly defined. Do you think that that is something that generally emerges naturally? Or do you think that that's something that can also be kind of consciously honed and defined?
Well, I think there's definitely artists who kind of find a shtick. You know, there's artists, they find this one thing and then they repeat it for the next 40 years. I find that a little, well, it's not the way I would hope to create my art. I don't want to criticize it, but I prefer artists who make you discover another angle of their work each time you look at a painting, you know. Every time you look at that piece, at a new piece, you go, wow, that's definitely him or her, but that's another view, you know, that's another aspect. And that's how I would like art to be created. I think art should be really, I mean, there's so much potential and there's so many ways. I mean, there's not enough time in the universe to create all the visions on canvas. You know, you have one spiritual opening or mystical experience, and you have enough to paint about for the rest of your life. And if you open yourself up, then it becomes really to universal consciousness. Then the energy just keeps coming through you, and there's infinite amounts of possibilities to shape, form, color, content combinations. So, and that's the great thing in sharing too. I mean, there's never, you can teach another person, or you can have students, but even if you teach them your deepest secrets in painting and your technique, you tell them everything and you tell them how you work, they will never be able to create what you create, because you have your art is unique. We're all unique.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Did you and Robert have a kind of collaborative relationship? Would you discuss your work with each other and give insights to the process of creating paintings and things like that?
Yeah, Robert always said that. He said that. I listened to an interview with Stanislav Grof that he actually came to film with us in 2009. So we recorded 5 or 6 hours worth of conversation, and I edited
Wow.
an hour and 45 minutes. It's actually going to be screened at the end of September, alongside with the release of his movie, The Way of the Psychonaut. So I'm very honored that he invited me to air this conversation that we had in 2009. And in that conversation, Robert said that I was his biggest critic, and that it wasn't always easy to listen to me, you know. and then we got into this, and I said, well, you know, this is certainly true for you, and this is how we would be. We would look at each other's work and tell each other how we felt about it. You know,
that's great. And I think,
yeah, no, go,
no.
of course, when
I was just saying, I think it's.
Go ahead.
Oh, it's important to have those kinds of reflections as an
yeah.
artist. If everybody around you just tells you that your work is great, you probably won't grow very much. It's helpful to have a critical eye that can help you to improve aspects of it.
But then also, everybody has, I mean, just because I was, you know, if I were to look, of course, I mean, I never felt like there was that much to criticize on Robert's work. I'm kind of like #1 fan here, but if I said anything, I mean, that would be my angle. Or if he came and he would say, well, you know, don't like that color, or how about this? And if you, added more light, that was his angle, and that wasn't necessarily my vision. So, but it makes us aware of certain, I mean, I think constructive criticism is great. And if we can stay open, we learn so much faster. If we can receive loving criticism or constructive loving criticism, we progress in life so much quicker. But it has to be done with love, and it has to be received with love and surrender.
Yeah, and usually artists are good at giving constructive criticism to other artists, rather than, art critics are kind of like repressed artists themselves who project a lot of their own shame of their own failings onto the artists that they're criticizing. And I think it's all about how it lands, that it feels different. Even if something is harsh, it's like, if it's true, it'll land differently. Like, oh, I wasn't able to see that, thank you.
Yeah, and I think that, whatever we have to say to others, if we do it, if we say what we have to say with gentleness and lovingly, we can be heard. If we start proselytizing or aggressing people, I don't think it goes very deep, because we're just going to hit walls. And I found in my classes that people were progressing much more beautifully and more easily if they were given gentle criticism and loving support in their creative process.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some people need more time, and some people need more support, and like you said, the academic setting in art can be very prohibitive, and teachers can actually turn people off.
Absolutely.
And many artists have felt that.
Yeah, I have friends who've completely abandoned doing figurative work because it was, too strict in art school, and it just turned them off from ever, it made it not fun for them anymore. And there's something about learning the proper technique, quote unquote, the proper technique, and then spending many years after that sort of unlearning and experimenting and discovering your own techniques. And the possibilities are really endless. And I think, Salvador Dali had a lot of interesting psychological techniques to get insights and visions. And I mean, that's a whole other ball game, not just the technique of how you create your paintings, but how you receive inspiration for your paintings. And artists have all different techniques for that sort of thing.
Well,
I'm curious. Tell me.
Yeah, well, for me, it's a very automatic process. It's a little bit, I go into the field pretty easily. I sit down, and it doesn't take me very long to get into the mood. And at this point, I don't even need anything specific. I mean, I don't necessarily need music, and I don't need to drink or eat or smoke anything to be creative. I can just have a cup of tea and I just go, and it's very interesting to observe that moment when I'm still in this sort of material reality, and within a few minutes I will find myself going through this veil, and then I'm in this other space where I completely forget about time and space, and everything just is and happens, kind of like a meditation. It's a deep state of meditation, the creative process. And as artists, we spend time meditating, I feel, while we're painting and creating. And so and it's really, and for me, it's a process of opening up in the deepest way, and just letting whatever wants to come through me come through. And my eyes get very, my vision gets very wide, and I start with very abstract surfaces often, can show you one. It's like, here's one. It's like, this is like a little piece, you know. I have very, you know, these pieces very abstract and very flowy at first, and then I begin pulling out these narratives and languages that you know, it's like little entities that are happening, and I don't even know what that is yet, but you know, some sort of a communication between these two entities there. But yeah, and it's just it's a dialogue. It's a dialogue between us and spirit.
Yeah, that's that. Oh yeah. Well, it's interesting. Yeah, I think that you can go into this kind of slipstream space between the worlds when you're creating, and you get into a good flow. I was reading yesterday about this artist Austin Osman Spare. Have you ever heard of him before? His work is a bit dark. He was like a British artist in the 1800s, but he would go into these trance states where he would kind of black out and wake up drawing, and have filled in like 50 pages of these automatic drawings that he claimed were like the spirits of dead artists like possessing him to create through him. It's just really fascinating, and I think that the more open you are, the more potential there is for the interaction with different forms of intelligence to create through you and to influence your creative process.
Right.
And you know, who's to say that there wouldn't be like a dead artist that would want to help you with something, or like an archangel or something like that would want to guide your hand to create a particular manifestation of something that needs to exist in this realm that didn't exist previously, or something like that.
Yeah, and I feel that sometimes, I mean, I swear there are moments when I feel that Robert is just completely looking over my shoulders, you know. And I've caught myself painting something like a certain line or a certain way of catching the light, where I felt that he was kind of like doing this through me, you know. And it's very interesting. I mean, this is something we discussed. We talked about it when we knew that he was going to leave, and I told him that he would have to stay in touch with me so he could show me what he sees, so I could paint it.
Beautiful. Yeah, I would definitely think that he would want to do that with you.
Yeah.
And I can see his touch in your work as well.
Yeah, well, this is always true too. When two artists work together, their art is going to reflect. You know, it's going to definitely. Well, two artists always inspire each other. I see that in Pascal's work. I mean, I didn't do very many landscapes before I knew him, and since that's his world, he does these magical landscapes, and I love them. So, you know, I get a little inspired. So, but this is a theme for a, well, it's inspired by the megalithic alignments of Karnak, and but we created an association. It's called the Vessels of Stone, which is it's a forum for everything imaginative around megalithic culture, because we don't really know who these people were. You know, we don't know what were these people that are called Celts, and we don't know where they came from. We kind of know where they came from, but we don't really know what was their purpose and what were these alignments for. I mean, it's all speculations. I mean, nothing can be proven, nothing is set in stone. The stones can't be properly carbon dated. So there's a lot of imagination and art and cultural reflections and expressions that have been created around megalithism. And so our association is, we're two artists, Pascal and myself, and an archaeologist, the archaeologist of the Karnak Museum. And we are planning on doing a festival next year. It was actually supposed to be held this summer, but for the COVID restrictions, we decided to postpone it to next year. And there's going to be a huge exhibition, and which is going to be the art of Pascal Ferry and the sculptures of Patrice Pitubert from Naya Museum, and some beautiful photography that involves juxtapositions of human bodies and stones and my work. And then there's going to be live happenings. Musicians are going to play, and we're going to give lectures on the Visionary and the megalithic history, and as far as we know about it. And so this is actually a painting that I created for that exhibition. So it's called Vessel of Stone. Yeah.
Beautiful. Awesome. Well, Martina, I want to be respectful of your time, and it's also quite late here. Yeah. So I think we should begin to. It's about 12:30 p.m. here.
Okay, right.
It's getting a little late. But I wanted to ask, as a kind of closing question, what are some of the biggest lessons that you've learned in your journey of an artist? And if you could give yourself advice, if you could talk to yourself at the beginning of your artistic journey, what advice would you have to share?
I would say, don't waste any time. If I could do it again, I would have started art school or some program a lot earlier in life, and I would have gotten all the academic stuff out of the way, like, you know, sketching from live and the full body figure, the full figure painting. And because I find that that's really important, it's an incredible, you know, basis. And other than that, I mean, just, yeah, what would I do different? Nothing really. I mean, I'm happy with the way everything went. I feel incredibly blessed with how my life has unfolded. Hasn't always been easy. And but I'm grateful for every bit. And what has it learned? What has it taught me? It just it has taught me to trust. The creative process has really taught me how to trust life, how to trust my intuition, how to know that my vision becomes reality, and how to set this process in motion quicker, how to manifest with art, has been a real revelation for me. And it's the continuous discovery. I mean, there's no end, there's no boredom to this. I see myself painting to my last moment. It's like, as artists, I mean, it's a funny term, retirement. You know, it's like, what does that mean for an artist? You know, we don't retire from what? From having the time of your life every day. So yeah, so it's been a great healing process. I know that creating my art has really supported me during the incredible times of loss and grieving, because it was a very difficult. I've had 10 incredible years, where it began with the loss of my father in 2009, and then Robert in 2011. And then I lost a good portion of my home in 2013. And then I lost a very close, the brother of my mother left in 2014, and my mother left in 2015. So it's been the continuous letting go, and creating art has been one of the cornerstones of keeping my strength going, or maybe the columns on which I kind of pulled myself back up on. So it's incredible healer, and a great way to process all sorts of wild things that can happen to you in life. And, you know, we're all going through these things that that are not always so simple. But yeah, so I'm grateful. I'm grateful to this and to knowing that this is my path, and there's never been a doubt. This is it. I love what I do. And I have a great community.
Yeah.
And I have this amazing community, such as yourself and all the kids in Bali and all the beautiful family in Boulder. And, you know, now my beautiful family here in Brittany. We have Andrew Gonzalez living just down, you know, just down the road. And so this is just incredible, incredible life.
Yeah. And we have the internet now where we can all connect, even if we're in different places all the way across the world from each other.
Yeah, truly. Yeah, very true. So we're making it work, and this COVID thing will pass, and it's just an opportunity for all of us to get on with it and get on a different train for sure.
Yeah, and I think that when this is over, we're going to look at all the amazing art that's been created, and also so many people who have wanted to have been artists, but were encumbered by work or whatever obligation, and now they're just at home with all this free time that they never had before. And it's a perfect time for people to really dive into their creativity in a way that they've never had the opportunity to before.
Yeah, and I think it's great to take this time not to get too busy with things that don't matter. This is a time to really do what we love to do. This is
absolutely
an opportunity to jump on that, and, you know, whatever it is, write that book, you know, create that music and paint those paintings.
Totally. Well, thank you, Martina. Yeah, it's such an honor to speak with you, and really inspiring, and a pleasure to connect and to hear some of your experience and wisdom. And I'm looking forward to that panel discussion that we'll be doing for that Art Spirit Fest. That should be fun.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to that. So likewise. So thank you for, you know, inviting me to this conversation, and it's been a real pleasure. And we've never met in person, face to face. So this is the first.
Well, we've met a couple times, but I was quite young. I think maybe you don't remember. It was I met you at Bicycle Day in San Francisco at 1015 Folsom, and like 2013, I think. And
you meet me at Bicycle Day in 2013 or 14?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah.
I think it was 2013,
was it like 4 o'clock in the morning or something? Oh no, you know what?
Something like that.
No, I think we met in the gallery now that you're saying it. I remember.
Yeah, I was really high on acid, and I used to look a lot different.
Yeah, and I remember actually you talking about your painting, because we had a show and we talked. Now I remember that very well.
Cool. Wow, you have amazing memory.
Yeah, but sometimes, you know, it's like these all-night affairs, you know, becomes kind of like a blur.
Yeah, especially that one. It's just all a blur.
Yeah. So maybe it's a fuzzy memory because you were fuzzy.
Exactly. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
But yeah, great to connect more deeply, and yeah, looking forward to whatever comes next to continue this conversation another time.
Yes, absolutely. It will be my pleasure, and see you shortly in the UK, or, you know, at least on the screen.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Much love, and enjoy the rest of your day.
And
Thank you
too.
again.
Yeah, and give my love to all the artists in Bali and Ubud.
Yeah, absolutely. I will. Be well.
Blessings. Bye-bye.
Blessings. Thank you.
Good night. Sweet dreams.
The Quarantine Sessions podcast with J. Cole.